WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
John Small of Marathon is the Democratic candidate for the 86th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. John Small, thank you for joining WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Thank you for participating in our candidate interviews. And I'll start by asking you, what is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Well, the first thing is my background. It's been a lifetime dedicated to community service. And when I get down to the legislature, what I want to work on legislative interaction with state agencies and with local governments. That interaction is very important. Then I've been since 2005 taking one class of interest every semester at UW-Stevens Point in biology or conservation. So naturally, clean water, clean air, and fertile soils are very, very important. And then if you ask a biologist what is the meaning of life, they're going to tell you that it's the perpetuation of the species. So that's adults having kids, teaching them to be adults, having more kids. Well, what's the most important thing we've got? It's our kids. So therefore, the school systems and childcare are very, very important for me.
So if you're elected, what would be an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Well, I also have another area of interest, and that's health care. So a bill I'd like to introduce would be that the legislature accepts the Affordable Care dollars that they have said, no, we're not going to take. And with that, by taking those dollars, then that can be used to reimburse the hospitals, the rural hospitals, and and that'll help up the Medicare, Medicaid payments to these hospitals. And that's why the one hospital out west failed, because 15 years ago the legislature did away with the certificates of need, which were, if you're living in an area and you went to a hospital, the hospital had to treat you. When they got rid of that certificate of need, the hospitals could cherry pick. You can afford to pay and you cannot, so you go someplace else. And the hospital that failed was getting all of those people that were unable to pay. The state has traditionally underpaid on Medicare and Medicaid, so they closed. They had to. So
take the Medicaid money as your bill priority. If you are elected to the Assembly, you would be entering during a biennial budget year, and the state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What are your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Well, the first thing I would do is I want to analyze and find out why is there that kind of a surplus. If I had a huge surplus in my home budget, what am I skimping on? What am I doing without? That all has to be analyzed at the state level to see let's get rid of that so we don't have such a big surplus. Yes, you have to have rainy day funding, but that's where I would be going with that. Tax cuts, it's got to be wise tax cuts. And the city of Princeton.
Who deserves a tax cut in your mind?
Well,
or should it be across the board?
Across the board. Mm-hmm. Across the board.
Do you have any spending priorities? Are there any parts of the state budget that you think should be invested in further?
Well, if you're going to do spending, then it has to be one time only. It can't be wages and ongoing programs that'll cost more money. It'll be used for projects. And one of the projects I've thought about is it's about time we had year-round schools. You hear about a learning lapse. Every fall, teachers have to reteach the kids because they've been off for so long. If we had a year-long school, that would probably be eliminated. But the schools have to be upgraded for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning because of the summer. It would be too hot. So the schools need to be...
That's your priority in
Yeah.
K-12 education?
Yes. Yes.
What about higher education? What does the future of Wisconsin's higher education system look like to you? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges. What should the legislature be focusing on in that area?
2-year colleges and the county, well, the 4-year colleges that represent the 2-year colleges, the county here in Marathon County, we got into an agreement. The county provided the land and the buildings. The 4-year college provided the teachers and the decor and all the inside stuff and the maintenance of the buildings. Well, if all of a sudden you jerk that out, now there's going to be, at the county level, how are we going to reimburse all of this infrastructure that has been built up? So I'd like to see us continue with 2-year colleges.
More funding to sustain 2-year colleges?
Yeah.
What about the workforce development across the state? What do you see as the state's largest challenge in that area?
I like workforce development. I've worked with them. The biggest challenge is probably trying to find skilled workers, but that's what workforce development is all about. You take, I got an example. I put 20 years in with the Wisconsin Air National Guard. I started out as a weapons mechanic. Then I cross-trained to be a veterinary specialist. Then I cross-trained to be an environmental technician, which was OSHA standards. That's what workforce development does. It teaches the employer how to train their people up. And what's great for the workers is they advance and they do better.
Does the state need to invest more in training then? Is that what you're saying? What should the state do?
What should the state do? If workforce development has a need, that's where they should be concentrating it. And when I was with the the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, we did lobbying. So I would depend very much on the lobbyists for the various advocacy groups to help educate, not just listen to the other assembly people, but find out what industry wants.
Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yes. When I was with the Department of Ag, I put in 10 years in the statewide inspectors union, Local 333. What that did was, I'm very much like unions, so yeah. Yes.
Higher local?
Higher local.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
Yes, I am aware of it. And when I was with Department of Agriculture, I did regulatory compliance. I had to find where the regulations were not being addressed, educate that person, or send them a warning letter, or pass them over to compliance to gain compliance through the court system. The same kind of thing can happen here. Workforce development, it goes through a bunch of different agencies. Each of those agencies have their regulatory compliance inspectors. If, let's just say a meatpacking plant is, well, that's not a good one. All right, a meatpacking plant is misrepresenting these workers as being private contractors. It's up to the Department of Agriculture, regulatory compliance people, to find that and get that.
More regulation of the
Yes.
situation. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Is it rent control or building more rentals or some other solution?
Wisconsin does not have any rent control statutes. So I would prefer building out of the need for more housing. That helps industry, more construction, helps the economy.
So more incentives from the state to increase supply?
Yes, and the federal government is starting, I think the Democratic Party is talking about increasing so many more 100,000 housing units.
Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, which you discussed, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Yeah, the ESP was going on that. Anyway, yes, I would want to take the dollars from the Affordable Care Act and apply that to reimbursing for
The
Medicare.
hospitals?
Yeah, the
Medicaid.
hospitals.
Mental health care is also a growing concern for many Wisconsinites and for state and county budgets. What are you hearing on this issue in your district, and how would you address mental health care?
I have not had very many people talking to me about mental health care, but it is very, very important. I am on the State Department of Safety and Professional Services examining board, psychiatry examining board. Mental health is very, very, very important. So we have to try and keep up with it. And
Is there a role for the state in helping with this issue?
once again, the examining boards and the department are monitoring this and looking for regulatory compliance. And what the examining board does is says, hey, we need more of this in this area, so we can apply for more funding.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
Abortion, Geraldine Ferraro said it best for me. She said her church teaches her that all life is precious, and she firmly believes that. But if she were raped and pregnant, she wouldn't know what she would do. But she did know one thing, that government would not be a part of the solution. And I agree with that 100%. Women should be allowed to make their own health care decisions.
Do you support any number of weeks as a limit?
As a biologist, for me it's viability. Is that fetus viable? Can it survive outside the womb? Even with extraordinary medical help, can it survive? And if it can't, when it's down in the few cell stage, that just doesn't make sense. So I don't put weeks or time on it. It's what does the medical science say?
What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Yes, that's very important. But I like the ARIP program for
Agriculture roads?
Agricultural roads. I like the thought of high-speed rail from Milwaukee, Madison, La Crosse, Green Bay. These are all future projects, and maybe even a smaller train routes, suburban kind of train.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how do you propose to address it?
Yeah, PFAS is a forever drug, and it's always in the environment. Science is starting to make some inroads into that to break that molecule down, so then it can be, with time, taken care of. And it's not just PFAS, it's the agricultural. I'll give you an example. A big old plain, I did a task force on that, and we found that tiling and ditching, when rains came, rapid runoff into the old plain, and with those nutrients, then algae blooms that would go down the Wisconsin River, Lake Petenwell would get a lot of nutrients. They have big algae blooms. So
what does the state need to do to address this?
With more interaction with the agricultural community.
We're down to our final two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
My opponent is corporate management, and I was village president. I was county board chair, supervisor.
You have experience.
Oh yeah, in all kinds of local issues.
Local offices and on local issues.
Yeah, I was president of the Wisconsin League of Municipalities, president of the Marathon County Economic Development Corp. I was 23 years with the Marathon City Fire Department. I was 20 years with the Wisconsin Air National Guard, and just lots and lots of local issues.
Your final question, let's say you're elected this fall and you get this magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all parties together. What would that issue be?
Because my background has been nonpartisan, that's what I would wave for. More nonpartisan, less partisan, and more
collaboration.
Collaboration. Thank you. And that's a good way to end this.
Well, thank you, John Small of Marathon, the Democratic candidate for the 86th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. John Small, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.
In 5, 4, 3, 2,